Hi, my name is Brendan, and over the past year, the Delight Cafe team and I have traveled across the U.S. researching this rapidly growing industry of CBD products. What we have found throughout the industry were products that were inconsistent in dosage and used ingredients that weren't even lab tested. Products with chalky textures, bitter aftertaste, and worst of all, confusion among the CBD consumers. That's why we created Delight Cafe. A 15 milligram lab-tested, all-natural, water-soluble hemp CBD powder pack. It's odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Add it to your favorite drink of choice, wherever, whenever, on the go. Quickly find your calm, your balance, and your delight when you need it most.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Victor Tango. This is my lovely co-host, Britt.
Hi, guys. How are you? Can't wait to chat with you guys today.
So it's been an interesting day. Seems like there's a stomach flu going around and work issues and everything, so Dave couldn't make it tonight, so you guys are stuck with us. But we're going to make the best of it.
Absolutely.
So tonight we are going to be interviewing Tammie Jo. Tammie lost her son to PTSD. He was an Air Force veteran, and she's going to be telling her story to us. She is also now an advocate for Mission 22, I believe it is. And so let's bring Tammie on and hear her story.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Tammie.
Hi, Tammie.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So how are you doing tonight, Tammie?
I'm holding my own.
That's all we can ask for. So let's get a little bit of history here. Now, you and I have talked a little bit, and your son was a veteran from the Air Force.
Correct.
And why don't you start just kind of telling us his history going into the military, all of that, and let's just take it and run with it.
He was in the military for 10 years. He signed up, went into the Air Force, was doing great. He's a medic. He was stationed, his first station was in Okinawa. He loved it there. That's where he wanted to go, was one of his top choices. He was there for a couple of years, and he didn't feel like he was doing any good for anybody, true good. He felt like that he needed to be doing more. He had more of a purpose than what he was doing in a hospital setting. Unbeknownst to some of his family, he decided to sign up to go to the front lines in Afghanistan. He had to get his commanding officer's permission and approval, several higher up, and he got it. He came back stateside to New Jersey, trained with an Army unit, retrained basically, and for the front lines, and went off to Afghanistan. He was there for somewhere between 6 to 8 months, and saw an awful lot. I can remember being on Skype with him, and back when Skype was a thing, and you could hear the mortars, you could see the screen shake, you could see the light flashes, and as a mom, you're terrified, and you're like, son, do you need to go to safety? Do you need to get out of there? And he'd play it off and be like, oh, no, they have the, ammunition, but they don't know how to aim, they don't know how to use it, we're safe. Little did I know at the time that he's just trying to comfort me more than anything. So,
yeah,
apparently a lot of that went on, and he did what he wanted to do. He helped a lot of people on the front lines, but he also lost a lot of people in the front lines. I think one of the worst things for him, there was a particular episode where he was supposed to go out. They were supposed to go do like a border patrol type thing. Pardon me, I'm not military, so I don't know the exact terminology, but they were supposed to go out. And they were training the Afghanistan people how to do this and what to look for and so forth. So when they left, they would be able to do this on their own. Well, that particular troop decided that they wanted to go out and that they needed to do this so that they understood. So my son's troop stepped back, and they didn't get very far out when one of the landmines went off, and everybody died in front of him. And there was nothing he could do, no matter what he tried, he couldn't save them. And unfortunately, he saw a lot of incidences like that. So unfortunately for my son, the thing that he wanted to do the most and was so important to him in trying to help people is what brought this PTSD to him, and which eventually ended up taking his life. And unfortunately, most of us did not understand or know about it until it became too late, or the extent of it until it became too late. You know, when you say you have PTSD, you don't necessarily understand what exactly that means or comprehend what that means. I had no clue. And now I sit back and, you know, it's always what if, you know, what I should have done. But I wish I would have questioned him further. I wish that I would have known that there were questions I should have asked, not expecting him to tell me, because normally, you know, my son's open. He would tell me everything. There was no, we're an open family. If something needed to be said, you said it. You know, we didn't really hide things from each other, especially Sean. You know.
How do you think his mindset changed from when he was like pre-military to after? I know it's obviously a big change, but what did you personally notice, something that others could look out for in maybe their son if they've gone through the same situation?
See, that's kind of funny. It's kind of strange because my son isn't like most people with PTSD, what you would expect from most people with PTSD. My son had anger management issues before going into the military. Okay, he had kind of a bad childhood. My husband that passed away, they had issues. The military, Sean needed structure. He thrived in structure, and the military gave that to him. And I was so happy for him. I mean, he started succeeding in life everywhere. He has more degrees than I can even begin to tell you about. He's even got a doctorate in medicine. So, I mean, in sports medicine. He was planning on opening a gym. So, I mean, he was really doing well. He was so active. He was involved in a tennis team. He was involved in a bowling team. He stayed so active. And I think he was so active to the point that he wasn't home. He was at home so little. And I think that was his telltale sign. And part of the problem with the military is he wasn't an alcoholic. He didn't care for drinking. He wasn't into drugs. That was not his scene whatsoever. So it was very difficult getting them to accept the fact that he had PTSD. They were denying that there was anything wrong with him. He had to go outside of the military and pay out of his own pocket to actually be diagnosed with what was going on, because he didn't know. He had no clue what was happening to him and why he was having problems sleeping and why he was having, you know, nightmares and flashbacks and stuff like that. He didn't understand. And he actually got diagnosed outside of the military and had to bring that documentation in, and actually had to hire an attorney.
Now, did he try and get help while he was still active duty?
Yes.
Did he went to the Air Force and tried to get medical help?
Yes, the only thing they gave him was sleeping pills. They wouldn't do anything else for him. They told him that there was basically nothing wrong, that he just wasn't a team player. Put it off on him. And they were actually trying to force him out of the Air Force as not a team player. Sean was very by the book, especially when it comes to patients. You know, he's an advocate for patients. When I was in the hospital, I had neck surgery. He came in, I didn't even realize it. Went over my charts, saw things that weren't right, and went out and yelled at the nurses. You know, and that's who he is. He advocates for the patient. And apparently there were some things not being done correctly, shortcuts being taken that weren't correct for the patients. So he spoke up. So that also doesn't go very well with commanding officers. So that was another thing, you know, they're trying to force him out. And with his episodes, I guess, you know, my understanding from like my daughter, a blender going off, him not expecting it, you know, that would jar him, and, you know, he'd kind of holler or something like that, and then not understand why he did it, you know, and I guess in the earlier on stages. and they were not assisting him, so that's what sent him outside. Plus, he knew that he wasn't doing anything wrong to be forced out of the military. He wasn't ready to leave the military at that point until he went outside and got treated and diagnosed outside and found out that the military was doing him wrong and trying to push him under the rug and just get him out. And that's where the attorney came in and helped him. And they were putting him out anyway with honorable discharge, but it wasn't the way they were doing it was wrong. So he did go out with an honorable discharge. But they also did him dirty there too.
Why do you think they did that? Just because he was going against what they were telling him, or?
No, the way what I'm finding out more after the fact is it appears that my son falls into a different category, one that the military apparently does not want to admit exists. Okay, you've got PTSD with drugs, PTSD with alcohol, and then you've got your PTSD mainstream people who are functioning, they're suffering, and they may not know exactly everything that's going on, but they are mainstream and they are pushing through as hard as they possibly can. That's a whole new category. That's more dollar signs. That's more everything. So they have to then stop. And all these people that they forced out, like they tried to do with my son, now that opens a door for all these people to come back in and say, hey, you did this to me. That opens up cases and more money and back pay to so many people. You know, my son went out with a check, basically. They gave him a check that was worth more than what his disability payments were going to be. My son got out with 92% disability. They gave him a check for 1 year, which was worth more than his 1 year disability payments. Unbeknownst to my son, when he agreed to that, there was this nice little clause in there that did not allow him any medical benefits during that time.
Now, who exactly gave him that disability or said that? Was that the civilian doctors that said that?
That was the civilian doctors, and that medical paperwork was brought in along with an attorney to the VA, and they had to accept it and acknowledge it.
So what they did then was actually, you know, that was against everything, because if an attorney went to the VA and the VA did not attempt to do any kind of evaluation on their own.
Well, they had done evaluations, but they just pushed him off under the rug, saying there was nothing wrong with him. They had
Did they do an evaluation after the fact of the doctor, the civilian doctor, and the attorney came in?
That I'm not sure about. My daughter would know more about that. She has all of his medical records from beginning to end. I haven't been able to sit down and go through them.
Okay.
Dave, you made it.
I did. What's up, everybody?
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
How we all doing?
We're good.
Doing fine. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Yep. Just got home from work, so.
You're fine. You're good.
Little crazy.
It's been a crazy day for all of us. We're just talking with Tammie a little bit about what happened with her son. I don't know if you were listening on the way home or anything like that, but
I didn't have connection.
Okay, you're fine. Brian, do you have something to move on? Because now my brain has gone.
You know, Dave was a veteran service officer for several years, and you know, the situation was her son had been in the Air Force 10 years, had issues with PTSD. The military is telling him there's nothing wrong with him, that he's fine. And he went to civilian doctors, and they're the ones that diagnosed him. So he hired an attorney and took that diagnosis back to the military. And instead of giving him any kind of medical treatment or you know, like we get, like you and I get now, we get our medical care. They they gave him a settlement and told him to get lost, basically. Have you heard of that before?
Oh yeah.
For 1 year, a settlement for 1 year, and then he would get his disability payments after that, and then he'd be entitled to medical treatment after that. Unfortunately, his PTSD took him about a month before that.
So what she's talking about and what you might not understand is that when he left, they gave him, because of his diagnosis, they gave him a medical discharge. And when they gave him a medical discharge, they gave him, the Department of Defense gave him basically a disability award through the DOD before he even could do anything with the VA. So that doesn't stop him from actually going to the VA afterwards and filing a claim for disability. So that there were two different things. So I don't want people to get confused about one over the other. So just trying to bring clarification to that.
Now, so he was told he couldn't get any type of VA benefits for 1 year. No disability benefits. By taking this lump sum payout, which was more than what his monthly disability benefit would be,
Right.
He could not get any medical. Well, he didn't know about the medical until after the fact, but he would not be able to get his disability payments for 1 year. Correct. By taking this cash payment. So correct. He couldn't go to the VA and collect a disability payment.
Correct. But he could have filed for it, and then they would have gave it to him starting right at the beginning of the year was over, and it would have picked up right then. They would have had the claim done by then.
And that was in effect, but he died 1 month prior.
Yep. So with that being said, yes. So he wouldn't have been given any of that type of stuff, but he should have been able to go back to facilities to be able to get mental health care for himself, even though they didn't, from what I'm understanding, they didn't prescribe it for him or require him to do so, to go get mental health care when he was being let go from the service, when they gave him the settlement. So he could have sought treatment there if he personally wanted to. And that's what they'll say. He
did. He tried in Florida several times. His father actually took him several times trying to get him treatment and get him assistance. And they even went to, there's apparently a branch with forces out in Florida that was pretty far away, but they went there as well, that they found out about through some other group. But the VA was just not willing to do anything for him in Florida. Nothing.
Yeah, the VA wouldn't have been the people that would have done it. It would have been because he wasn't part of the veterans yet. So here's the difference, and people need to understand: is the VA is an entity that is for veterans and veterans only. And what is a veteran? Veteran is somebody who's actually served their country and is no longer serving their country. That is the actual definition of a veteran. They have timelines that are required for you to meet to be considered a veteran. If you were in the service on active duty prior to 1980, you had to have 90 days of consecutive service, active duty service, to be considered a veteran. After that, 1980, September of 1980, you have to have 24 consecutive months of active duty to be considered a veteran in the VA's mind. So the Department of Defense, which everybody thinks that the VA and the Department of Defense are together, the VA is an entity for people after service. So when you're completed your service and you're done. The Department of Defense is the organization that oversees all of the branches of service. So they're the ones that are over the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard.
Right.
They don't talk to each other. So he doesn't become part of the VA until he's done with his disability and entitlement through the Department of Defense. And then he would move over to the VA. So that's why they won't see him, because he wasn't entitled to it. He was still under under Department of Defense. He wasn't under the VA yet. So now, that's why. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Why would the Department of Defense offer that lump sum to them, knowing they got medically discharged for PTSD or mental health issues? So a civilian doctor diagnosed him. He got discharged. Why would the Department of Defense even have him have that cash settlement?
They give
Do you
the
know what
cash
I mean?
settlement because they don't want him to come to work anymore. And so they give him that cash settlement for something to live on, because they don't want him to be a part of the dysfunction of their group or their people. And what I mean by that is when you're early on in your PTSD, you can be a huge problem and distraction for your unit. And so they medically discharge you to get you away from that. Now, with that being said, they're still on the hook because you're still under the Department of Defense and not under the Department of Veterans Affairs. You still could have got treatment on base because he was still under the Department of Defense collecting that lump sum. So you should have still had base privileges to be able to go get mental health care. So that's what should have happened.
Well, nobody gave him that information. We were under the impression it was a VA.
And unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm sorry that you're just hearing about that now, but that's the way the difference is between the two. The VA and the Department of Defense are two completely different entities, and they come to play in completely different areas of a veteran or a service member's life. And they don't work together when it comes to taking care of the veteran themselves. So in order for a veteran to get health care or to get any type of benefits from the VA, they have to first prove that they're a veteran under the definition of being a veteran to the Veterans Administration. The DOD doesn't do that for you. You have to do that on your own. And veterans or service members don't understand that when they leave service. They consider the VA as part of the government agency that takes care of them. And that's not the case at all. And so it took me a long time to figure that out myself. Going through my disability claims and all that stuff, I fought for over 8 years to get to where I am today for my disabilities through the VA because I didn't understand the game initially. But I learned a lot in the time that I was a veteran service officer because I wanted to be able to speak intelligently and help as many veterans as I could take advantage of the benefits that are there for them and understand how to get there to get them themselves. So even the one that I really like to do is when people have been denied already is going back and saying, I can get you benefits because I know the game and how to play it and be able to get you to it. So the unfortunate thing is that he didn't get to the opportunity for him to be able to actually apply for his benefits through the VA. And I'm sorry to hear that. There's nothing sadder than losing your child, especially to something like suicide. And I'm sure that was very difficult. And I know that when it comes to talking about mental health and talking about stuff like this, I can empathize. And I've been to the crossroads where it's almost been me and my parents having to bury me because of the same issues with the demons and everything else. And so that's another reason why we have this show, and one of the reasons why I was a veteran service officer is because I want to help as many people as I can that are heading in that same way. Put on the brakes, and if we can save one or two, then great. We've done something good. So that's why I'm here doing that. So.
Now,
why don't you talk about the events leading up to your son choosing to do this? Because this is something that everyone needs to hear.
My son, it was right before the 4th of July, 3 nights in a row. Apparently the neighborhood that his father lived in, they were setting off their own fireworks, the mortar type ones, the big loud ones that make all kinds of nice, pretty shows in the sky. They were going off until about 2 o'clock or later in the morning. So for 3 nights in a row, this particular year, my son was by himself. Apparently his dad was going away and checked with him to make sure that he thought he was going to be okay, be able to handle it this year. And apparently he thought he could, but apparently this year was worse than previous years when he had somebody with him. At this point in time, I still didn't know the severity of it. He had been very active, but again, up till 2 o'clock in the morning, past 2 o'clock in the morning, not being able to sleep because of the constant shelling noises and flashes and so forth. The third night, the 4th of July, he was out. Everybody that saw him that day, I mean, he was helping with a fair that was going on through the Chamber of Commerce down there in that part of Florida. And I guess he came home. It just wasn't stopping. He couldn't get away from it. And he got his stuff together. He took out his gun that he had and he went out to his father's shooting range, and military taught him to take out the problem. And that's what he did. He wasn't like he was suicidal and, wanted to die. This was, he couldn't take it anymore and he had to take out the problem. And that's what he did. He basically went to the back of the brain and took out the problem. And he was found the next evening by his father. When his father came home and found the car. Thought it was odd, but Sean doesn't always, he's got friends coming and going, picking him up, and then went in the house and found, his phone, his car keys, his wallet. Something didn't seem right, so he called his other son, Adam, Sean's brother, who was back here in Maryland, actually at his sister's house right down the street. And they started talking and realizing something didn't seem right. And like, you need to call file missing persons report, because last time somebody heard from him, it had been over 24 hours. And his father decided he had a gut feeling, so he went and looked for where Sean kept his gun and found that his gun was missing. And his father has a couple of acres, and there's also a pond. So his father decided to go looking to see where he might have done something like this, and he found him in the shooting range at like the back edge of it. So, and in talking to the neighbors have confirmed that, about the time that Sean would have gotten home, based on when they had gotten home and him not being there yet, which was after 11 o'clock at night. And that, yes, it had been an issue, that the fireworks had been a real issue and going off at 2 o'clock in the morning for the last 3 nights. There is a good thing that is coming out of it, though, and we're really hoping that it takes off and that we can make it go into every county across the United States if possible. Manatee Lanes down there in Florida, they just love Sean to death. He came in there, he had been there maybe a year, and they were so taken back by what happened. They didn't have a clue either. I mean, he came in there and, he befriended everybody. He helped everybody, young, old, it didn't matter. And they were in such shock that they wanted to do something. So they are going to have a tournament in 2022, right before, in Sean's honor, right before the 4th of July. And they're going to take the proceeds from that tournament. And on the night of the 4th of July, they're going to close the lanes down and invite in veterans suffering from PTSD and allow them to come in and play for free, because apparently in the bowling alley, you can't hear the sounds of the fireworks. You can't see the flashes. So they are hoping to bring in enough money to get as many people in as they can. And if they raise enough money, to even offer them food and beverages as well. But to give them a safe place to go to get away from it. I mean, they can't control every single night. They can't do it every single night. But on the major night of it, to at least give them a safe haven if they want it. And we're hoping that it turns out really well and that it's successful, that they can continue it, and that we can get other bowling alleys to follow suit.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I myself struggle with fireworks going off, and especially the ones that snap, crackle, and pop really fast. Sounds like machine gun fire. And then the big booms going on with it. And then you have the ones that come down that are just bright white that kind of just rain down. that's like mortar fire. It takes me right back. So it's very difficult for me during celebrations with my family to do that. But I try to do it just because I want my kids to understand the importance of freedom and the importance of celebrating our freedom. But it's difficult for me as well. Tammie, what was your son's name?
Sean Liebman.
Sean. Was Sean self-medicating at the
No,
end? Was he
no.
drinking? Was he
No,
smoking marijuana?
my son was the one. He's so straight-laced, it's not funny. And that was part of the problem with the military, is that he wasn't a PTSD on drugs. He wasn't a PTSD that was using alcohol. He kept himself busy. He has more degrees than, like I can even tell you. He was on top of the world. He was in the process of opening a gym by the name of Slim Jim. He was trying to do a lot for the community. He was involved in so many different aspects of the community that nobody saw this coming. Nobody had any idea of what he was suffering through, except for the people that were super, super close to him, like his dad. His brother and sister had a little bit more knowledge because, he would stay with them if he came into town and stuff like that. So they knew more about it than I did. But they didn't even know quite the severity of it. I think his dad knew more than any of us. But it was something that Sean just, for some reason, did. That was one thing he didn't openly talk to us about. He would tell you about anything and everything in the world, but this is one thing he never really spoke of. When he was getting out of the military, it was more like an in passing type thing, that the military was giving him a hard time about PTSD, and that he has PTSD, and he had to hire an attorney, and the conversation was more like that than I've really got this medical issue, Mom. I'm suffering. I'm having a hard time, sleeping. We didn't have that conversation. So I didn't know the severity of what was going on with him. And that's out of character for him. If he's having an issue, he would tell me. So for him not to tell me about something this bad, I was really taken back, and I was completely stunned, and I didn't know what to think or how to deal with it when I got the phone call and I found out what happened. I was actually kind of livid, and I was angry at his father because his father had more knowledge than I did, and he wasn't there. And of course, as a parent, when you find out that you've lost your child, and somebody knew something that may or may not have been able to help, and didn't tell you either, you want to throw blame. But then after talking with his father, I realized that his father thought that everything was going to be okay. His father was just as stunned as I am. And unfortunately, his father has to live with the fact of finding him in the way that he did. So now his father's got his own trauma that he's got to deal with. And it's nobody's fault. It's a demon that Sean was dealing with and couldn't deal with anymore.
Yeah. And the thing is that when you come home and you leave service and you have PTSD, and Brian, you can speak to this as well. I know you can. You don't want to talk to people about what's going on. And the reason why you don't want to talk to somebody about what's going on is because you're afraid that they are going to think you are absolutely nuts. And the things that you're going to talk about, they won't have any idea of how to relate to what you're going to share with them, because they've never been in a position where you've had to make split decisions on whether I'm going to pull my rifle off safe and actually start shooting rounds downrange at people, or putting mortars downrange, or any of that type of stuff. And when you sit down and talk to somebody, a civilian who hasn't been through that, even family, you don't want them to know the depths of the hurt from that, or what you had to do to survive. And so for you, it was survival going through all of it. But for somebody else, you don't know how they're going to react to that. And so you don't want to share your story openly. So you suffer alone, and you do. Then you try to control it by yourself, because you don't want people to think that you're crazy. And you don't want people to think that you're a killer. That you don't want people to think that you have an anger problem. the sad thing is that that's exactly what you look like when you hold it in too, is you start to get edgy and you start to become the grumpy old man, or the, the kid who's driving 100 miles an hour and tailgating everybody and road rage and flipping everybody off, and all that kind of stuff starts to happen. So it's very difficult, and I'm speaking from my story, and so
Right.
I'm just assuming that it's similar. I know it's similar for Brian because we've had conversations about this. I'm just assuming that your son Sean was going through similar stuff, because in your mind, in your subconscious, you've had to deal with so much that is way beyond what you should in an average life. And it's not just one time. It's not just one incident. It's when you're in the military and you've been deployed, this has happened over and over and over again.
Right.
Your mind can only handle so much of that before you get to what's called numbing. And then you're numb to everything around you. You're numb to how you actually feel about how you think. You're numb to all kinds of things. And then that becomes even a bigger problem. So I'm glad he didn't self-medicate, because that's what I went to. I went to self-medicating. Alcohol was my drug of choice. And that doesn't help either. That led to many years of problems as well. But
Well, my understanding from his father is it was apparently getting very intense for him, because he had headphones, he had earplugs, and even through that, he would be awoken from his father's snoring, or startled out of sleep from like his father's snoring, and he would get angry and highly agitated and so forth over different sounds. Like apparently armadillos would scratch on the outside of the house at night and startle him, and even with all these different objects trying to protect himself so that he couldn't hear things, even with sleeping pills. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't get rest.
Yep.
All these different things would wake him and scare him and startle him and jar him, and it was really difficult for him.
Yeah. So then you look at throwing PTSD on top of not being able to sleep, and your body doesn't get restorative sleep. I mean, that's just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off when you have that situation.
And as active as he was, I mean, he was barely at the house, from my understanding. He was involved in the Chamber of Commerce in Crystal River, the young professionals portion of it. Because like I said, he was starting a Slim Jim. There was some tennis team that he was involved in. There was a bowling alley that he was involved in. So he was constantly on the go. And I guess that should have been our trigger, and that's what we should have been looking for. Since he wasn't on the spectrum of the drugs or the alcohol, the fact that he kept himself so busy that he was only home long enough to sleep if he could sleep. And that's something that nobody caught, nobody realized.
Yeah. I want to bring
Do you
this.
know if?
Hold on a
Do
second.
you know
Brian.
if he? Okay.
I want to bring this question up. It says, how can we make vets or those suffering from PTSD feel safe to talk to civilians? Is there something that would have made you feel more comfortable with talking to your family or friends? I want to answer this question, and I'm going to speak from my experience. I'm going to take this as somebody's asking me this. When I came home, I immediately realized the difference between me and everybody that I knew before I went into the military. And even my immediate family became more like acquaintances than friends, because of the fact that the people that I went through what I went through, I was closer with than anybody else. So people like Brian, I could have called Brian up and could have talked to him about anything in the world.
Right.
But I didn't have anybody there to do that with. So I was back on the block in Minnesota, and I didn't have anybody that I served with to be able to communicate with. Cell phones weren't as big as they are now. Not everybody had them. Back then, internet wasn't there. We didn't have social media. We didn't have these web programs that we could FaceTime and Snapchat and do all that stuff together so that we could stay connected to be able to do that. I think finding somebody that you can that you feel comfortable with sharing this information is the only thing that's going to get you to open up. And the only way that you're going to do that is the veteran has to find a purpose so that they can become comfortable with what their life is. And then they'll be able to start to open up and talk about the things that they're trying to work through in their life. But that starts with giving them a purpose. And because they're left a purpose that was greater than themselves, they still have to find one similar to that, because nothing else is going to measure up to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So would you agree, Brian?
Oh, absolutely. The only person I had that I could talk to even then it was a little weird for me because it was my dad's best friend, but he was also a Marine combat. He was a Vietnam veteran, and he actually approached me. I think he saw the signs in me, and he knew how to talk to me.
Yeah.
And growing up, he was pretty open about his service, so he was the only one I trusted, because I knew that he'd been there too. Unfortunately, once you are away from your friends that you served with and everything, I mean, it's really hard to find people like that unless I know there's some guys that do come from a family where the whole family are veterans, and I think they probably have a little bit of an advantage. But for those of us that, I was the only, other than my uncle, who he passed away when I was in my early 20s. I was the only veteran in the family that was still living. So,
Tammie, do you guys have any other veterans in your family, or was Sean the first to go in?
No. Well, wait a minute. Was he the first? We have 3 veterans in the family. I think he was the first to go in. My daughter, her husband is a veteran, and my youngest son Ryan is also a veteran. And my husband that passed away, Sean's stepfather, he was a veteran as well.
And that I'm gonna tag on that too. I think it's a great idea of having. It's one of the things that helped me too. Little normalcy as being able to talk to veterans that had been through a similar type of service. So one of the things that my ex-father-in-law did is he took me to the VFW and sat me down with some of the old timers and was able to have conversation with them. So that helped a little bit, just because you had some people that served and had learned some of that behavior as well from their service. So you had something in common, but they were all his age or older. So, they're 30, 40 years older than I am. So the connection was there, but not there. So I tried to talk to my grandfather, and my grandfather is a World War II veteran, and we didn't have a lot of things in common either, because he was never in an area where he had to deal with PTSD or any type of conflict or any of that stuff. So he got lucky during his time of service. But so for me, I think that having somebody who served before me and had gotten out prior to me would be, within a few years, be good to have somebody like that around to kind of pull you into their group, into their circle, to start giving you some type of comfort or something like that. Now, how do you do that? That's a great question. That's something that would be awesome to be able to figure out and do, to add that to services that we can offer veterans, our military service members, as they're leaving service. Come to this group, come to that group. Hey, here you are. I know the Navy has a a thing. It's basically a mentor. When you come to a new command, they have somebody that you check in with, and you can help you around and do stuff like that. The Marine Corps, some bases have that as well. But it's kind of the same thing would happen. If that could happen when you come home, that'd be awesome. So you have somebody to check in with you, like an AA sponsor or something. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be an AA sponsor, but I'm just saying, somebody like that. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
But I think that would help a lot with mental health and getting people back into the community, reacclimating a little bit easier, but also getting to know your benefits, getting to know what's available for you. That's a huge thing. The VA wasn't knocking down my door trying to come find me and find out if I knew what was wrong with me either back then. So,
no, it's very difficult. Nothing is easy at all.
Right.
It's very difficult.
Yep. And when you're doing a claim with the VA, it's all legalistic. And so it's very much like a lawsuit. And so it's you basically filing suit against the VA saying that they owe you for the things that happened to you while you served your country. And that's what it is, really. It's a lawsuit that you're trying to get benefits through. So it's a little bit different than Social Security, and it's a lot different than getting financial benefits for not having a job, like unemployment or welfare or any of that. Those things are a lot easier to get than.
It's very time consuming.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, it's a game that you play with them as well. They expect you to come to the table, and whatever they give you, they expect you to be good with and go away, or give up anyways and go away if you've been denied, and they don't expect you to come back. They don't want you to come back, because everybody that comes back is more tax dollars that goes out. And it's the only non-tax money out there that comes from the government as to its veterans for VA disability. The rest of it is all taxed. Your Social Security's taxed.
Yeah.
So
it's just unfortunate in Sean's case, even because he was given that lump sum. He was told he can't go to the VA to get medical. Like, I don't know if they made it clear to him that he could still go to the medic on base. But he was paying out of pocket for health insurance to go to a civilian doctor and be diagnosed with something. It's very unfortunate that they don't connect a veteran. Like, you're medically discharged, you should be able to prove that you've served and you're a veteran. It's weird that there's that in between disconnect between all of it.
Yeah, because if you serve 10 years, I mean, you're not in there for 2, and then you got 2 that you got to hang around for. 10 years is 10 years, and then you're medically discharged. That should be all you need. You shouldn't have to play this type of game.
Well, it's not playing a game. It's just the way that the VA set up. That you have to let them know that you're a veteran and that you just left service. There's no other way to do it. The VA doesn't communicate to them and give them information that you're a veteran and that you're honorably discharged and that you are eligible for benefits. That's something that they want to do on their own by having you send in an application to them with your military documentation to show that you have served and that you do earn benefits through the VA system. So, I mean, I kind of understand it a little bit, because they would get a lot of records from people who, for example, for a Marine like myself, you get a lot of people that come through that don't even make it through boot camp, that they would have to send those records then over to the VA for them to make a determination on if these guys are actually eligible for benefits right away. They don't want to talk to those people that didn't make it through it. The
Right.
reason why because they didn't earn anything. So that's a lot of paperwork and wasted time and money, resources to go through all of that. So I can understand it in that aspect. What I can't understand it is with people who have gotten out with an honorable discharge and they know it's medical, why they can't send it over right away and be able to do that, or has an honorable discharge and has the amount of time and active duty service and send it to them so that they can then contact that veteran and start the process. That would make things
or why they would even send a lump sum of money for the year, right? Like, why would they even offer that to somebody knowing they're medically discharged?
And again, because that's coming from
but it just doesn't make sense in my head.
No, what happened is he wanted to be medically discharged because he didn't want to do it anymore, or they wanted him to leave.
They wanted him out.
Either way. So when that happens, people get an attorney. So now you're in a lawsuit against the Department of Defense. So that's
going to give the money. I got you.
So that's going to stop them then from sending that stuff to the VA because they gave you a ton of cash. They're not going to say, well, now you need more. They're going to hope that you go away too, because the VAs, that would be a lot of cash. So here's something to understand. When you're dealing with mental health, the unfortunate thing is there are a few people out there that have one benefit for not actually having PTSD. And so it's made it even harder for people like myself and Brian and Sean to do something about it, because it's not something that the VA can see. It's not something that people understand or know. Because, if I got all the service and I was missing a leg, you'd know that something happened, right?
Right.
But if you look at me, do I look like somebody who is injured? Do I look like somebody who's disabled? Do I look like somebody that is unemployable? No, I don't. But because of my mental health and my PTSD and depression and other things, I'm unemployable, supposedly. So, but the thing is that until we can get to the point where, as men and women of service, we can talk about mental health openly and not feel less than for having a mental health issue or diagnosis, until we can get to that point, it's going to be extremely difficult for us to move forward where we can have groups and talk about what's going on with people until we can get past that point. From my era of when I was in with Brian, and even up till the around 2000, so let's just say 2000 on back, you didn't talk about mental health. There was very little conversation about it. They had started the transition piece back where you would spend time after September 11th, 2001. When you were deployed after that, you'd come back and then you'd spend like 30 days at a base, and they would have you check in, and they'd maybe do an evaluation and check in, see how you're doing, how's life with your family or communication with your family going. And they would check in with stuff like that. Back when we were in, they weren't doing that. You got out of service and you went home, and there was no check-in on, hey, do you have any thoughts of beating the crap out of somebody, or do you just fly off the handle because somebody looked at you funny or bumped into you, those kinds of things. I mean, there's a lot of signs that could show that we had those issues. Brian can attest to this as well. We had a motto when we were in the Marines. It was work hard, party hard. We were in an elite unit, and we did a lot of things that today I look back and go, I'm surprised I'm still alive. So, but it's not only that, we would go to bars and we wouldn't be afraid who was in the bar. And it wouldn't be uncommon for us to actually just start a fight in the bar because somebody looked at us wrong. And I mean, it's that type of behavior. So getting out, you already know you got an issue, right? You're hot-headed. Anything can set you off. You're heading down a slippery slope fast. If I was open and I wasn't too macho to talk about mental health, I could have had this taken care of back in, the late 90s and been moving forward. But we weren't talking about mental health. they weren't improving mental health claims unless it was schizophrenia or something else like that. They weren't really doing post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a lot of things that have changed over the years and a lot of progress has been made, but we're still at the point where we're too macho. We have too much to lose by people knowing that we have a mental health condition, and we should have shame for that. And I'm 6'3", I'm 275 pounds. And if you want to come tell me that I should feel shameful for having PTSD, come to my front door. So, so I'm at the point where in life that I just want to, I want everybody to know that it's okay. Talking about it's okay. Humor is part of the cure for me, and coping mechanism for dealing with it and talking about it. But at least I'm talking about it, and I'm getting other people to talk about it, and that's the key piece.
Right.
We need more people to be comfortable with talking about it.
I agree.
So, Brian, what you
Tammie, I would like Tammie. She told me when I spoke to her earlier, but I would like her to just talk a little bit about, the aftermath of this, what it did to, Sean's siblings, to his niece. This is what guys that are thinking about going down this path, this is what they need to hear about, because you get in this mindset, nobody's going to miss me. I'm screwed up. Nobody's going to miss me. I'll just be doing everyone a favor. And that is so far from the truth. So, and I know this is hard, but if you can elaborate a little bit on just, what it does do to a family.
It rocked our world. Sean was a rock for his older brother and his little sister. He was a big guy to his niece. She loved him like there was no tomorrow. Nobody understands why, but she latched on to him. He could be gone for months on end, and the moment he walked through the door, she was all over him. She had just seen him a few weeks before this all happened. We understand that, Sean is out of pain. We're happy that he is out of pain, but what we don't think he understood is that when he put himself out of pain, he put all of his family in agony. We are crying a lot. We don't sleep a lot. We never know what's going to set us off into tears or what's going to make us angry, short with somebody. We were just so taken back by it. We had no clue. Couldn't understand why somebody would think that this was so much better, and how they could do that to the rest of their family, how they could not understand how important they were. Sean was so important to me. I mean, he was the one child that looked like me. He was the one child that was so much like me. And we used to have a joke because he was going to be the medic in the family. He was going to be the one to keep me out of a nursing home. He'd be the one taking care of me. Him and his sister, I mean, they were like two peas in a pod. They could talk to each other about everything. They could get on the phone anytime Sean. They could call each other middle of the night, didn't matter. They were always there for each other. It's the same way with him and his older brother. His youngest brother, Ryan, they had a casual relationship, but it even shook him. It's just destroyed everybody. It really has. None of us are the same. None of us are quite as close as we were to each other. We don't feel like we can talk to each other about it. We want to, and we are there if the other person wants to talk, but it's hard because me as a mom, my daughter and I work together in an office in automotive repair. people would come in and they would look at me, you know, especially really good customers that know us and know we're mom and daughter and everything. Pardon me. And they would give me more sympathy because I'm a mother who just lost her child. And there's nothing worse than a parent who has lost their child. And for quite some time, I could only see my own grief as a mom who just lost a son that she loved and adored. And it took a long time for me to realize how much pain my daughter was going through. My daughter couldn't come to work for a week. Her and I run that office. You know, we found out I had to go to work the next day. I had to be there to open up. I had to be there to work, and my daughter couldn't come to work for over a week. So that made it very difficult. And it took probably about a month before I was able to realize that I'm a mother who lost a daughter and a son. But then I realized that I have a daughter who lost a brother. And it took a while for me to be able to realize the grief that she must be going through that I can't understand. I can understand the grief of losing a child when I couldn't understand when my grandmother lost her children. I couldn't understand that then. I can understand it now. It took about a month before I could even acknowledge the fact that Brittany lost a brother, something that was very close to her, and I could not comprehend what she was going through. I didn't truly acknowledge it the way it deserved to be acknowledged, and I can't comprehend it because I haven't lost a sibling that I was that close to. So that's actually damaged our relationship, and Brittany and I have been close forever, but it's actually damaged us. So in him taking away his pain, it's created a tsunami of pain within the family. It really has. And we're trying to, you know, get through it as best that we can, a little here, a little there. And I did, once I realized my wrongdoing in not acknowledging my daughter's pain for losing her sibling, I apologized to her. And I started stepping up and saying, you know, she's lost too. Yes, I'm a mother who's lost a child, but she's a sibling who's lost a brother. And that's just as severe as me losing a child. Yes, I gave birth to a child. I raised him, but she had a total separate bond. You know, she had a, you know, play in a tent and, you know, have sleepovers and, you know, a whole different bond, you know. So it's just as bad for her and maybe even worse in some aspects. But there are ways that I can't comprehend because it's something totally different. And to the person who's sitting up there thinking that, you know, they're all going to be better off, you're wrong. If you have any ounce of knowledge that that person loves you, trust me, it's going to torture them when you're gone. It will. They're not going to understand, and they're going to start questioning everything, every little thing they've done, every little thing they've ever said, things they didn't say. They're going to wish they had. They're going to wish they had asked questions or done other things. And every single person that you were close to in any way, shape, or form is going to go through that. And it's horrible. It really is. It's gut-wrenching. And at moments, I think I'm okay. I'm starting to do okay, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it hits me. And people say, "Oh, it's going to be a year or so," and I'm like, "No, I'm a strong person. No, I'll be okay." And I start pushing through, and out of nowhere, it hits. And I look at my husband, the man of my dreams, and I'm just like, "I'm sorry. I don't know where it's coming from, and I don't know why." And not quite sure how to deal with it. I'm not one of those people that sits in a room with a whole bunch of other people. You know, I got involved with some of the groups online, and that's how I'm trying to deal with it and cope with it and talk to certain people. I'm okay talking individually with people and talking with other people going through the same thing to a degree. But I also have to keep pushing forward. I'm not the type of person that just sits there and can't go to work anymore. I can't do this. I have to keep a roof over my head. I have to keep moving forward. And I have a family that I love and I adore, and this has crushed us all. And as mom, I got to try to figure out, how do I fix the wrong that has happened? How do I make us all right again? And I don't know how. And this is what happens to a family when someone decides to do that. It crushes all of us. And to his father found him. His father is living with that every single day and is having his own mental issues from it, and cries a lot and has a hard time dealing with the images that he saw of his own son. I can't even begin to imagine what he's going through. Now, to try to help me as a mom, you know, we were divorced 17 years ago, but because of what he found, our son, so to try to share in some of that pain when it came time for us to say goodbye and to see Sean and ID Sean, I asked to have time alone in the room, and I wanted to see my son. So I put that burden on myself to see him. So that person sitting there thinking that, you know, when you're gone, it's okay and it's all good, it's not. Because your parent is going to want to see you. And your parent is going to want to understand what you're going through in that last moment. And they're going to want to look at you, and they're going to want to hold you, and they're going to see everything. So don't think it's over, because for you it may be, but it will never be over for everybody else. I don't know what else to say. I just hope and pray that if you're thinking about it, pick up the phone, text somebody, call somebody. There's a lot of us that are here. I'm part of Mission 22. You know, there's tons of people in Mission 22, tons of people in Valhalla. There's people all over that are willing to sit up and talk as long as it takes. Just please make that phone call, make that text message.
And see, that's a side that is very important for veterans that are struggling with PTSD or suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, whatever the diagnosis may be. But if they are having suicidal thoughts or contemplating it or that kind of stuff, is really need to hear the side that what's going to be left when you're gone. It's not going to end the problem. It's not going to fix the problem. You're going to create financial stress. You're going to create a lot of hardship in your family from just all of that. And I would thank you for being so strong and coming on and sharing that with all of us today, because we all have to understand that piece of this. And get to know it and own it, because that's got to be a deterrent for us who struggle, to be able to look at one person who has been brave enough to come out and share their story about what it's like to be without their loved one because they decided to cure the problem in their mind.
You touched on something about financial. Sean loved his sister Brittany so much that he had a will done and basically left everything to her. Problem with that is, when he did this, he was in the state of Florida. We're in the state of Maryland. She had to hire an attorney out of her own pocket to handle, even though he had no property anymore, but an estate had to be opened in the state of Florida. An attorney had to be hired. Everything had to go through a probate court. All his funeral expenses, everything had to be paid for, and weren't allowed to use Sean's money to do it. So that's another thing, you know. Luckily, her brother Adam had money setting aside, so he was able to come up and put some of the money up front to assist her with it. But he loved her so much that he was trying to do a good thing for her, but it actually cost her a lot of pain and agony in the end, and it's still going on. You know, she has to go to Florida to handle some of the business. So as much as he was trying to do good for her, his actions cost her even more harm. Her and her brother. It cost them financial hardship as well. You know, and so when you think about this and you think that I'm going to leave you money and everything's going to be okay, it's not that simple. There are laws that have to be followed, and it's not like you can just go open up that bank account and take that money out, because if your name's not on it, you can't touch it. They freeze it. The moment somebody dies, everything gets frozen.
Yep. And see, that's it's good for me to hear that. I'm gonna say that, just for the fact that, days that I'm struggling with that, one of the things that veterans with PTSD aren't very good at is relationships, and I'm sure you guys can understand that.
Yep.
It's my relationship with my wife is 23 years together, married for 20. This is my second marriage, but I still have times where I don't feel like I'm the person that I should be for my family, and I'm the person that they need me to be, and they would be better off without me. But if I did do something, I would have 3 kids that are crushed here at home. I've got 2 adult children from my first marriage that are sure would have issues with it. And then you talk about, where does that leave everybody financially and all of that? It just continues to do that. I don't know. It doesn't sound like your son did this, but I was one of those guys that came home and I pushed everybody away from me, because I didn't want to be near anybody that I didn't trust.
Well, Sean didn't really come home. I mean, he did come home and buy a house, but he wasn't there very long. He kept getting moved to different locations. But yeah, he did have trouble in relationships. But he managed to stay kind of far away for most of the time. He had gotten married after he got home, and there were problems there, and they ended up separating, getting a divorce. But he was gone more than he was here. So it's not like, and I think that was probably his way of dealing with it too, so that he wasn't close to anybody. If he came in to visit, it was in for a short period of time, and he was gone again.
Yeah.
And if he had downtime, he would travel. And we thought he was just trying to see the world and stuff. He did so much in such a short period of life, And as we were going through his memorial and looking at the video and putting everything together of every place that he had gone and the things he had seen and done, it was like, wow, he lived such a life in such a short period of time. But now when you look back at it and you think about it, it was his way of not being too close to anybody and not letting anybody see everything that was going on.
Not letting anybody in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not letting anybody in. And because you let somebody in to see that demon, you're not going to like what you see.
Yep.
Yeah. This strikes a chord in me, and I know it strikes a chord in Brian too. I can tell just by looking at him. The demon inside of me in my time when I first got home was a demon that had the power to turn it on from happy to irate to I'll take somebody out and already have a plan to know how to do it when I met people. And so I would go to bars with friends and I would look through the whole bar and I already know who was the biggest one, who was going to be the hardest one to take down, and what I would have to do it. And that person inside of me, and talking to somebody about that who doesn't understand that about me, makes it extremely difficult to share that. So coming home and going to public and doing those things, I wanted to be alone. And so for me to be in public, I had to self-medicate. I had to drink to make it okay. But then some of that would happen. Some of those fights would happen. Some of that stuff would end up happening. Well, then consequences come with that, right? And the behavior. And then you're in a position where you're feeling bad about yourself. You've got consequences. You've embarrassed your family. And now you've got to deal with all this. Well, now they're better off without me. And so you start going down that slippery slope. And it's easy to get into that from the demons inside, from relationships, because relationships, you don't do very well. Relationships are hard anyways if you don't have mental health issues. Just being able to live with somebody else for a period of time is very difficult to do. And then having to talk about raising kids and paying bills and all of that together and how the money comes together, that's difficult. And then you got somebody that says that when I run into problems, I'm taught to eliminate the problem. So
Right.
I just run through it, right? And I take it out. Well, I can't take out my wife because I'll go to jail for that. I can't take out my neighbor because I'll go to jail for that, right? So you're looking at somebody that's been trained to go 100 miles an hour in that direction, and then telling them to live regular life. And it's just impossible to do. It's very impossible to do. And I'm getting to a point here. And the point that I'm getting to is he was having a hard time coping with what he had going on in his head and what he'd been through, that he was running away to try and keep it at bay as much as he possibly could.
Right.
And without being in one place too long, there weren't many conflicts. He was able to move around and be kind of superficially happy with everybody and everything going on without letting people know exactly what's going on with him. And without somebody getting in there and getting to know him and him to be able to open up at that level is what caused him ultimately to make the decision that he made. And I just wish that there would have been somebody in his life, in his circle, that could have been there for him to say something or to check in on him and say, hey man, how you doing with these fireworks or something like that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we talk about this on every show. Our show is here. Brian and I are here. If there's somebody out here that's watching the show and is struggling with relationships, is struggling with self-medicating, is struggling with suicidal ideation, is struggling with that stuff, reach out to somebody. We have our email address go through here all the time, victortangoshow@gmail.com. Just reach out. We'll talk to you. We'll get you connected with the VA hotline. We'll get you connected with the National Prevention of Suicide line. Whatever you want to do, we're here to do that. And so we're more than happy to share our time because Brian and I have been through it. We're more than happy to try and help somebody off the ledge from doing that. And that might have been just what he needed, is a brother or a sister that's got the been there, done that, got the T-shirt to prove it, got the scars that are there, just to be able to share. And
but I think he kept moving around so much that there was nobody to be there, nobody who had traveled with him, so that he didn't have anybody that he could do that with.
Right. Yep. And that's unfortunate because we're trained to be by ourselves,
right?
And that's where we shouldn't be. We're trained to handle ourselves by ourselves, but that's the worst thing for us when we're dealing with PTSD or depression or anxiety.
Exactly.
So,
does it come to a point where you only trust yourself too? I would imagine, like, because you have nobody else to talk to, so you're just, I trust myself and that's it. Deal done.
Yeah, you get to a point, and Brian, you got to talk on this too, but I got to a point where I didn't trust anybody. I didn't trust my first wife. I didn't trust her family. I didn't trust my family. I didn't trust any of my old friends. I didn't have anybody that I could trust. And I was incessantly trying to find the people that I served with, because I needed somebody that I could connect with that understood where I'd been. And back then there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't LinkedIn, there wasn't Instagram. What was that first one that came out?
MySpace.
MySpace.
Yeah, that wasn't back then. So, and then getting those people from my era to get on the internet and then finally get into doing this. We weren't computer nerds, so we weren't doing that kind of stuff. So we were out drinking beer and getting in fights, surfing. So I know, I like I said, comedy is part of my gig here, my shtick.
Right.
But that's how I dealt with it. And so, Brian, you can talk a little bit on this.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of ironic because, when you think about it, where the training we have, we're literally trained to be our own worst enemy. Yep. And, the running, I did the same thing. I've lived all over the United States, and it was just a way of running. And, now, I don't know if the word friends is the right word, but instead of trying to outrun the monster that's inside you, you've got to learn how to live with the monster inside you. And you can't outrun it because it's going the same speed you are. And it's hard.
Sometimes even faster.
Yeah, no doubt.
Depends on how much booze you feed it.
And I did the same thing too. And Dave can tell you about, some of my drinking days. I was out of control.
Oh yeah.
And
we both were.
It was bad.
I have one of my best friends, her husband, he's a veteran, and he's had a few things going on here in the last few years. And I always tell him, like, I'm here. I know that it might not mean much to you, but I'm here. Luckily, he stopped drinking. That was the biggest battle I think that he had to fight, because he's got to learn to live with him now and not coat it with the alcohol. So.
Yeah, and what I noticed, at least, for me, is the more I tried to drown that monster, it might work for a while, but at least in me, all it did is it pissed that monster off more, so that when he sobered up, it was even worse. And I finally realized that, and I walked away from it one day. I know there's a lot of people can't do that. I don't know how I was able to do it, especially with the way I drank. But I literally woke up one day, had one of the worst hangovers I'd ever had, and I said, "This is stupid. I'm done." And I just quit. And I realize it's not that easy for everyone, but that was definitely my downfall, was alcohol too. So
I think alcohol is downfall. A friend of mine sent me a message about alcohol the other day, and it's true. Alcohol is a life sucker. It's a life sucker. And the reason why I say that is because when you start to use it for medicinal purposes, and when I mean medicinal purposes, is that you're using it not to just have a sip of brandy or a sip of whiskey or a beer or a glass of wine. When you're using it where you're putting a lot of it away every night, it's a life sucker. That's the thing that's getting you through. So you devote your time to it. And, for me, I look at that and think about that. And I think about how much time I devoted to, I have to be around a place where they have alcohol. so that I can feel comfortable in my own skin. And that's how I plan my activities. And the sad thing is that I wouldn't remember the activity because of the alcohol that I drank. And so, or the things that I said, or especially if things got bad between me and my spouse, then we, she would say I said this or I did that. And I'd be like, I didn't say that, but I'd black out. I wouldn't know. So yeah, it's definitely a life sucker, and it does create monster problems for those people who can't control it. Somebody who has PTSD is probably not the best person to manage alcohol, just in the intake of it, because it feels good and you think you can handle it, but you can't. It just starts to take over, and then you need more and more, just like any other drug, to get to that same level of comfort. And pretty soon you're going to either end up with cancer or stomach cancer or something else from all the alcohol poisoning you've done to your body. So it's not a good thing to begin with. So it's not really a positive thing for most people. If you can be the person that can be controlled and have a sip or a glass or a beer, more power to you. I'm not that person. That demon wants it all when we buy a 12 pack or when we buy a case. He wants to see the bottom of it. He wants to see the cans and the recycling. So I can't do it.
See, and that's a common thing for a civilian and for someone who's been in the military. Mm-hmm. We have that same demon. It's just in a different form. Right. So just to knock that stigma out of, when you guys get out, that it's like there's no one to talk to except your fellow men that you've fought with. There's some commonalities, and we want people to know that and feel safe and comfortable talking to others, even if they haven't been through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why I don't think that AA was ever, back in my younger years, was something that I could be a part of, because nobody there understood why I drank.
Right.
And so it was hard for me to talk to somebody who didn't understand the demon. And so I did. I understood him. He was thirsty. Tammie, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of a book called Suicide Survivors, A Guide for Those Left Behind?
I have heard of it. I haven't seen it.
I got a copy right here.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it.
I do.
When we get done with this show, I want you to stay on. I'm going to mail this book to you. I want you to read it. It's a survivor's guide. It just kind of helps you process it a little bit. And then when you're done with it, if you want to pass it on to the rest of the family, it might give them some tools when it comes to processing it for themselves, just to be able to do that. But I'd like to send that to you. It's something that we used to send to families when their veteran would commit suicide, and we'd find out when I was a veteran service officer, and we'd send it to the family so that they could start to work on the process of moving on and getting through it. So I would definitely love to send this to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what else you got, Bri?
It's kind of funny, this conversation tonight. It's made me realize some things about myself too that I didn't realize before. So I'm little in shock right now, I guess.
Oh, I brought some. Who brought the insight? Was it Tammie? Was it me? Was it Britt?
It was kind of a combination of everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's okay, Brian. Cry. I got my shoulder here for you. It's all right.
Oh,
Hey, Marines don't cry, brother. Come on, suck it up.
Yes, they do.
I wasn't crying. I was just leaking a little CLP out, you know.
Yeah.
You're chopping those onions out, huh?
Yeah. It was a little
Dinner
dry
time.
in that. A little dry in that truck. A little dusty.
Yeah.
No, it's okay to cry, brother. We're here for you. Yeah, that's the one thing is with PTSD too is the ability to show emotion, and mine's chronic PTSD. So when we are in a situation like where we're hearing a story, Tammie, like yours, or a funeral or something like that, I don't react the way that everybody else does until later.
I'm the same way.
And so, and sometimes I may act inappropriately in conversations like this, or at a funeral where I might actually giggle or something because I'm trying to make a joke or something to force back the feelings, because I don't want them to be shown or what it may be. But yes, we all need to be able to open up and share our tears and tears of sadness and tears of joy. So I'm sorry for teasing you, Brian. I love you, brother.
Oh man, I'm good.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody. Am I closing this thing out, or what are we going to do today?
You're the man.
All right.
Take it on, Dave.
So, Tammie, I want to thank you for coming on and speaking with us today. I apologize for being late because of my job, and the time that it took to get through the end of that and get here late. Brian, thank you for starting the show and the plan to do it without me. I'm glad that I was able to get here because this really meant a lot to me to be here for this. So I appreciate that. And Britt, thank you for being here as well. To everybody out there who's listening now, watching now, or will be watching this on YouTube on the Cafe Delight channel, we want you to know that our show is sponsored by Delight CBD. And if you are feeling a little out of control with yourself, this is a great product to try to use to calm you down. For those of us that have used it, tried it, we have liked it, and it's been great for us. It's even safe for you to use for your dog, so our pets. So it's a great product. Do some research if you'd like, but we recommend if you are in need of something like CBD to give this a try. From that, I want to say thank you to everybody who's been in our show today and taking the time to spend this evening with us before Thanksgiving. Anybody out there who is struggling with the holidays, struggling with nowhere to go, no one to spend their time with, no one to be there for their holidays, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm even going to do something here. I'm going to put my phone number on here. And if you need somebody to talk to, don't hesitate to give me a call. This is my personal phone number. This is my cell phone number. Give me a call. I am here to listen, and I'll be more than happy to at least be an ear, even though we may not have gone through the same things, have the same issues. I've been living with PTSD since 1990. So I think I've got a few years under my belt with it. So does Brian. And we would be more than happy to find you some resources or be able to point you in the right direction to get some help. With that, I'm going to say Victor Tango Show is going to say goodnight and hoorah!
Hoorah.
Right.